Welcome to Rise by Failing Forward podcast. I'm your host, Varsha. It is always great to hear about people's successes and achievements, but it is far more uplifting when we hear their failures, missteps, wrong decisions that led to many lessons learned and open doors for bigger opportunities. We bring such brave leaders to you who are willing to be candid with us and share their career secrets. Today, I have a pleasure to welcome Riccardo Forlenza. Riccardo is an MD at IBM. He held many senior positions as an MD at IBM in many different countries, which makes him a very accomplished global leader. I wanted to ask him why he left India out of this list. Prior to joining IBM, Riccardo was lending officer at the Commonwealth Bank of Australia and credit analyst at UBS. Little different career. He holds a bachelor degree from Mercy College and a master's degree in management from the MIT Sloan School of Management. I must admit, this was probably the best podcast in this series as far as my learning is concerned. I learned so much about meritocracy, authenticity, and managing your blind spots as a business leader. Best part of the interview for me was when Riccardo explains how he manages difficult clients. His 3-bucket strategy is a super win for me. I hope this gets your listening antennas all the way up because you are about to hear the most candid conversation from a very successful business leader. Good morning, Riccardo. How are you?
Good morning, Varsha. Very nice to see you.
Very nice to see you too. Riccardo, we welcome you to our Wings for Growth podcast called Rise by Failing Forward. As the name suggests, Riccardo, we invite senior successful business leaders such as yourself to talk about your failures, missteps, or maybe decisions you would have thought that I would have made it differently. Let's get right to it, Riccardo. A month ago, you and I were catching up about your career and your journey, and you shared with me that your first very important legal decision that you made, unfortunately, was when your father passed away, about his funeral arrangements. And then right after that, second very important decision you made in your career is you decided to bring yourself from Italy, where you were born and brought up, to come to US, to a land of opportunities, but lots of unknowns. And I am assuming, like for every other immigrant, a lot of struggle and hustle in the beginning before you can start rising. Riccardo, talk to us about your journey.
Varsha, you have an incredible memory. So that is true. My father, unfortunately, had multiple sclerosis and suffered from it for 17 years and ultimately passed on the 9th of October, 1984. That day, I turned 21. And so in Italy at that time, 21 was legal age. And so the first decision I made was funeral arrangements for my father. My mother was 44. She was grieving and not in a position to arrange for things. And so I made the mistake not to let grief run its course at the time. And that's something that's one way or the other stayed with me for a long, long time. I continue to have, and will probably always have, a sense of my own mortality that's probably more heightened than it is for most. A couple of days later, as we had guests come to our home, because there are no funeral homes really in Italy, so Papa was kept at home until he was buried. I wanted to get out of the house, and so went to the town hall, the city hall in my small town in Italy, and did all the documents for a scholarship that I wanted to apply for. Not thinking, frankly, that it was going to be fairly assigned, because oftentimes in Italy things work a little different, and so things go to those who are in a position of authority, right? That was clearly not my case. But through luck and hard work, I ended up getting a scholarship and had an opportunity to first study in Italy in a college, in a Catholic college that was affiliated with a Catholic college in upstate New York, which is about 2 miles down the street from where I sit today, right? And that ultimately made me come here to this country and begin my journey.
Wow, that was quite brave. And you were young. Were you fearful that you're coming here and you won't know what's ahead of you?
Yeah, yeah. So you and I don't know if you can relate, but many abroad hold America in this high regard as a land of opportunity, right? A place where many can pursue their dreams, not only their financial dreams, but dreams of success, of peace, of harmony, right? And find them, right? And so, to a degree, I was intrigued by the opportunity to come study in this country and ultimately to move here, right? But I was also in search of a meritocracy, right?
Yeah.
Italy, at least the Italy I knew, southern Italy, I grew up in Naples, was a land where opportunities were few and far between for those who had skills and skills only, right? No connections. I was nobody's nephew, okay? It's just what it was. And so coming here felt it gave me a start and where I did not have a race I needed to run with a handicap of sorts, right? The ability to compete fairly on equal footing with all was all that I was pursuing, right? And so I completed my undergraduate here. Then I was supposed to go back on a second scholarship to get my MBA. But many of my professors here encouraged me to pursue higher educations in better schools than the ones I would have gone to. And so I ended up working for a couple of years for a Swiss bank in the city. I worked in a leveraged buyout group, which at the time was all the rage, was the hottest thing in the market. I was the most junior person, but really thrived in this fast-paced environment. I was oftentimes coming home at 3 o'clock in the morning, but I was feeling important, right, in my very small ways. And at the end of that, I ended up applying to a number of graduate schools, and I had good luck because I applied to 5, got into 4. The one that I did not get into was Stanford. The ones I did get into were Chicago, Columbia, Wharton, and MIT, and I ultimately ended up going to MIT.
Wow, look at those all big names. I always thought Italy is such a beautiful country. I thought I hoped that I was growing up there. But I do hear you, nepotism is something that we also feel very strongly in India, and especially they talk a lot about it in film industry. Riccardo, you mentioned meritocracy. I want to talk a little bit about that, right? Meritocracy is all about equal opportunities based on innate traits and people's drive and ambitions. I wonder in the organization, as the organizations get bigger, meritocracy is not that prevalent, right? It starts to sometimes feel like more bureaucracy because you can't really avail all these equal opportunities to everyone in a large organization. Also, similarly, not everyone is up for grabbing those opportunities. So my question to you is, as a leader of the organization that you are in now, how do you create a safe environment for people to take risk, be innovative, and not be fearful for whatever they want to do?
Varsha, you have an important point. Not everyone has the same interprets success the same way, right? So what might feel success to me may well be very different from success in somebody else's eyes, right? And it's a function of a lot of things, not only ambition, but also what makes for happiness, for the basket of goods that ultimately results in what makes me happy, which is no doubt different from what makes you happy and everybody else out there, right? So very, very difficult to continue to offer up a personalized view of meritocracy as organizations grow larger, right? But that's nonetheless one of the critical responsibilities of a leader, right? Otherwise, how are you going to extract the best out of your team if you cannot genuinely interpret what meritocracy means to each one of them, right?
Good point.
So back on your point of how do we ensure that everybody feels good, feels safe, to use your word, in taking risks. I think at the end of the day, we all know that that everybody has a different risk profile. So asking a very risk-averse person to counter their nature and take risks that they don't feel are aligned with their objectives, with their basket of goods that results in their happiness, is not a very productive exercise, right? But offering all the opportunity to feel comfortable taking risks and then letting them make a determination as to what risks they're willing to take is more the approach, the more nuanced approach that we all need to find a way to pursue, right? And the great thing about it is to share with the team your own feelings, right? And feel good about commenting about when things didn't quite pan out the right way and what you got out of it, right? And so not that difficult to do. And I usually find that the teams are eager to see you in that guise as well. Not only is a successful person on the throne of this and that, but also the person that feels at times not particularly not successful, not necessarily bright. At times, I have been many times in my life where I've not felt bright enough to handle the situation I was handed.
And sometimes it's also true that not everyone really knows their own potential. So as a leader, recognizing people's potential and giving them stretch opportunities to grow and providing that support is not only good for them, but also good for the organization. Go ahead.
No doubt. I think you're hitting a very important point. I think what's interesting is this balancing act between a stretch and a tear, right? So to a degree, we're really looking to for individuals to stretch so that they can grow into a potential that they may or may not have fully acknowledged themselves, right? We get to that stage, then we set the individual back in the organization and the pursuits along with it. So very important to find a balance between one and the other. And so what I always try to do is I always try to be very pragmatic about it. What does a person bring to the new endeavor? And what will the endeavor help the person acquire, right? If there is a possible balance between the two, right? And especially if the person is eager to pursue, then the stretch becomes more plausible, right? Balance between the two is always the objective in my mind.
No, I think that's a fair point. Stretch versus tear. You want to be careful there. But women are often accused to be to have those imposter syndrome, that if not every box is checked, they're not going to offer themselves, or not seek those opportunities. But I do agree with what you said, is that there has to be a match of endeavor and ambitions and also strength. Appreciate that. So Riccardo, my next topic, I always thought every time I met with you is that I think you come across as a very authentic, true to yourself type of a leader. You speak your mind, you speak holistically, and I always admired that in you. And at Wings, this is a big topic. We actually have a full workshop called Being True to Yourself. Now, the challenge there is that being true to yourself and being authentic, being able to express your feelings, your decisions, and transparency, it's not very easy because you have to go through a lot of corporate scrutiny gates. And when you do that, there are some people who are fans, they are supporters, and then some people are detractors. They don't see the way things you see, and maybe oftentimes competing and conflicting. Similarly, I think in your business, the clients, they don't want to hear the truth, or maybe even more, they want you to hide their truth, right? How do you manage all of that? And specifically, if you would, I would love for you to describe a situation where you possibly made a mistake or made a bad decision or a wrong decision, and you had to come out as a leader and deal with it. So twofold question. One is, what is your secret sauce of being authentic at work? And second, how do you become vulnerable and very transparent to your team and to your clients while still maintaining that leadership?
So, Varsha, very important topics again. So, I think I think that there is an intersect between authenticity and self-love. I, to a degree, don't know that I could be any other way, but the person I am. Let me try to expand on that and see if I can make some sense, and you'll help me out if I don't. I know that I am fiercely individualistic, that I want to be myself. I knew a few years into this country that I would not shop for suits at Brooks Brothers. I did not want to blend in. I did not want to look like everybody else. I did not want to sound like everybody else. I knew I was asking everyone to make an effort to put up with my accent, but I always focused on my content and said to myself, content will rescue me, will see me through. If what I say matters, people will put up with the fact that they have to make an extra effort to understand what it is I'm saying. Okay. And so this permeates all aspects of trying or of how I try to offer myself to others, right? I love myself. I want to be true to myself. I do not want to lose myself as I carry out my responsibilities at work, for sure, right? And so that becomes my centering aspect. I want to always stay true to that, right? And if you do that, you cannot not acknowledge your mistakes. You cannot escape not scrutiny, but clarity and candor when something that's less than ideal comes along, right? And I made for sure my fair share of mistakes, across multiple dimensions. I'll tell you, I've made mistakes in communication, right? In finding the right communication style. You know that I've been on 5 international assignments with IBM. So I have worked in New York, in London, in Singapore, in Prague, in Melbourne, in Milan. And I'll tell you, wherever you go, despite the fact that we all think we're pretty well versed in international communication, you oftentimes are not catching some important nuances on how people will react to your message. So many a time I had to make amends and acknowledge that while there was no ill intent in what I was saying, I was certainly not effective in how I communicated, right? And I think teams really reacted well to that. I'll give you just a snippet of my time in Prague, during which I had to be pretty harsh. The business was not going well. We were in a spiral. Our revenue and profit were spiraling down, right? And so I had to make some pretty harsh changes. And the content of what I had to do was pretty straightforward, unfortunately. The manner in which I did was suboptimal. And because of it, it took me longer to get it done. And ultimately, we didn't achieve the results we should have achieved as fast as we could have secured them. Okay. So there was a little bit of a catharsis on my end as well, right? And being very straight up with my team about the mistakes that made along the way, right? But I'll tell you that coming out of it, as I left Prague, I left Prague right after Christmas 2013. We ended up having a Christmas party at the office, and I sang their Christmas carols in Czech, and they sang my most favorite Neapolitan song in Neapolitan, okay? All video recorded and for everybody's consumption, right? So I will tell you, it is very rewarding when your team sees you struggling to get something done, making mistakes along the way, but also acknowledging them and being willing to take remedial action. So
I think you said quite a few important things that I wanted to really summarize because they all resonated so well with me. Number one, accent and how do you look and what do you wear? I came from a very small town in India where English was something that we learned in the classroom, never spoke. Also, I dress differently, maybe some fuzzy and hair and things like that. And I'm here on Wall Street. What am I doing? Many times people would ask, pardon me, excuse me, what are you saying? And that could pull you down, because that really basically means that you can't communicate. You can't raise your hand in a room full of very important people. But one thing I learned later, so I struggled through that, but one thing I learned later, as what you said, that it doesn't matter. I have something important to say, and I'm going to say it. And people are going to ask me, excuse me, pardon me, and I'll continue to repeat until I am understood. But it came later for me. So I completely, it really resonates what you were saying.
So Varsha, I think this accent thing actually can cut both ways, you know. I think to a degree, it could be viewed as a handicap, of course, but knowing that I have an accent made me a better listener. It made me focus on how, on making my delivery a lot more deliberate, okay? And so while others end up learning the skill later in life as they become senior executives, right? This teaching, if you will, was forced on me early in life. So at times you have to find a way to make lemonade out of lemons, right? And so I think it's important not to look at our shortcomings and debate them for too long, right? But find a way to an angle to put them to your advantage.
And also, as you said, that it makes you a better listener, and you want to understand what other people are saying and why they're saying. And I'll share one quick example there too, is a communication style that you talked about, right? When my son was little and my parents used to come visit, and both my parents were professors and teachers, my father would try to teach my son, who was 6 or 7 year old then, mathematics and other subjects. And he would have this American slang, I know. And my father would say, you don't know, that's why I'm teaching you. It would really frustrate him that you don't know, that's why I'm teaching you. So understanding that communication style was very important. Then I had to really explain to my father that that's not what he really means. Ricardo, what is it like working for you? What do you think people
What is
who
it
work
like
for you?
working for me? So that's interesting. So I just completed performance appraisals with everybody in my team, right? And that's one of the questions I've asked, right?
Yeah.
So I always ask 3 questions at the end of every performance appraisal. Was I fair in my comments? What comments do you have for me? And where would you like to go, you know, career-wise, right? And so the second question about input from them to me is critical. And if you put people in a position to speak candidly about it, you actually get a lot out of these comments, okay? Especially if you are carefully reading between the lines, and you're willing with your body language to make them comfortable and say, hey, listen, this is like, I'm not gonna leap at you. It's, you know, I really want to hear, right? If you show them that you think of yourself as work in progress, as somebody that's still trying to figure it out, as we all are at any point in our career, right? I think it's important. And then you start detecting patterns. You start stitching things together between one person and another, and realizing that there is, in fact, a pattern to their comments. And if there is a pattern, it is your responsibility to pay attention, okay? And so one of the patterns is patience, right? So I know that that for the most part, people feel my interest, my warmth, for lack of a better word, okay?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they don't dispute it. They acknowledge it and value it, right? But they also see that at times I'm very impatient, that my mind is tripping over my mouth, and I'm trying to get too much content out in any one unit of time, and I'm not being as patient and as collaborative as I want to be if I was having one of my better days. Okay, and so I think that's one of the traits I need to continue to work on, right? Acknowledging that that bringing a team along is critical to our success, and that central to doing that is ensuring that we have a level of patience and understanding for everybody's different way of learning or progressing through an issue, right? Not always easy. Not always easy. For the most part, I would say my teams in many different parts of the world have ultimately enjoyed working together, right? But Varsha, it's not an easy thing to establish trust with a new team. For me, it's been a career made up of 3-year assignments in many different parts of the world, right? I get parachuted in, and oftentimes there is a level of mistrust. They're bringing somebody from outside to fix a sinking ship, right? Very, very difficult to be trusted as you first walk in, right? So in my case, oftentimes, this has been a journey, right? That went through multiple phases, right? The phases of a divorce kind of thing, right? So there is this first phase of, let's wait him out. Let's just, how much longer can he be here anyway, right? So let's wait him out. Let's minimize damage and we'll wait him out, right? Then you go through a phase of awareness, of understanding that the business issues are there anyway, right? Whether I'm there to fix them or not, the issues that brought me there in the first place remain and need leadership, need execution, right? And so then you get to a phase of some level of collaboration where we tolerate each other, where we try to work, right, each other as best we can, to then get to a point where you are finishing each other's sentences and genuinely get to a place where you're executing well together. You trust each other, you have each other's back. The sense that you finally get to a point where you have each other's back is just, in my mind, all that I aim to get to. And unfortunately, as soon as that happens, you get yanked and they send you someplace else, right? So it's, and the cycle begins all over again, which is a little daunting at times.
I don't know, what are you talking about? To me, you're always so patient and trying to listen. So maybe you are also a good actor, Riccardo.
I guess I am. Look, I'll tell you, any one of my kids will tell you that patience is not my strongest suit. When they were young and they would see me tear down the corridor of our house, they would plaster themselves against the wall, just let me by. because I was moving too fast.
Also, I congratulate you that you sat down with your team and you asked them the question that, hey, what can I do better or differently? And I like your idea that when people can be candid and they share with you, you can also start to look at the pattern, and then that it's not just what they are saying, but also there is a pattern. And that's a great sign of a leader, that recognizing that and working on that. So thank you for doing that. I appreciate this. I learned something today. That's what I should be doing. Look at the pattern. All right. So my next question, Riccardo, is about building consensus. I worked for Goldman Sachs for a few years, and the culture there, I think, still is about building consensus. They don't do anything until everybody nods and say yes, 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 and then they will go do what they decided to do. I could see the benefits of doing that because everybody's on board, but I often also felt that sometimes it's inefficient. And we spend so much time discussing the topic rather than, hey, let's go with one direction. Question for you is, did you ever have an idea or vision, business vision, where you felt like it was very difficult to convince everybody else, whether it's your clients, your team, or your management, but you felt very strongly about your vision? If you did have that kind of a situation, how did you convince everyone and brought them on board? Or was there another strategy?
Yeah, but so important topic. This thing about consensus versus individual leadership and kind of charting a way is critically important. I work for a company that is largely consensus based, right? So IBM, probably not unlike Goldman, prefers a consensus based approach. As do I. I do think that it is a great means of running a company, a complex, large international company, more effective than the alternative. Then again, each individual circumstance oftentimes calls for a different approach, right? So you cannot always resort to consensus building. If Rome's burning, right? So you need to calibrate accordingly. And being that nimble is a skill we need to continue to refine, certainly in my company, right? So oftentimes we resort to what we're more used to, even with the circumstances, the market opportunity or the competitive threat would call for a different approach, right? So being a little more nimble on that would probably an objective for all IBMers, certainly including me, right? There'll be many instances in which I had a perspective. I don't want to call it a vision because it sounds too highfalutin to be. Let's just call it a view, a point of view, or whatever. I had an objective in mind that I wanted to pursue, and I did not necessarily have the team around me. Not as yet convinced that it was the right approach. That is often the case when, again, you come into a situation that's been brewing for a long time, and people that have participated in all the various phases of it are perhaps it's a combination. On the one hand, they are acutely aware of the perspective of the business dynamics that culminated in the situation being what it is, right? And at the same time, they're perhaps a tad defensive since they contributed or they were there when the situation got what it is, right? So now you come in as an external force and you need to sort it out. Well, the one thing you probably don't want to do is keep on doing what team's been doing, because that hasn't proven to be successful, right? So you have to chart a different course, and you have to do it in a manner that brings the team along, right? Not easy, right? Especially if it's a senior team of people that are sophisticated, nuanced, seasoned business leaders, right? One such case happened to be as I finally came back to live in New York after 9 years on assignment, right? And the team was genuinely convinced that some of their clients were not fair, or just clearly not fair. And they had developed biases against our company and the individuals represented, right? I held a different view. I thought our clients were being very rational. They might have had some preconceived ideas, but they were not acting irrationally or incompetently. And it was on us to find a way to show up better, to put our best foot forward, and find leverage points that would ultimately result in rebranding our company within my client. Not easily accomplished, especially because we needed to essentially pick our spots and figure out what projects would ultimately catapult us into a different perception, right? And in order to pick the projects, I needed the very team that was disenchanted and wanted to run the other way, right? And so finding a way to select the projects that would intersect not only of what the competencies that my company had, but also the unique attributes of the individuals that I was going to ask them, to be leaders of it, was really the art form, right? But it was so much fun. It's so rewarding, because in the end, this became not my idea, but became their idea. It was their projects, their ventures, right? So they now think of this as generally something that we have at the very least have done together, right? Which is what creates sustainable competences, and right, and creates not only a win, but a win that keeps on delivering good results and good value for both my company and the client.
And sometimes I'm sure, Riccardo, you probably have a client who is, who doesn't have a good rationale, right? And now they are your clients, and you still have to you have a situation, or you have an opportunity or ideas, and they're not coming on board with you, but they are your clients, right? And they really are thinking completely differently, which you think may not be right for them. How do you deal with that situation?
So I'll put them in three buckets, Varsha. There is a bucket of people that have reasons that I don't even want to know about, that makes them biased. Okay, I have worked in a lot of different places around the world, and I will tell you, it happens.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, they have a very rational bias that I cannot alter. Okay. towards a favorite company or a business partner or a way of conducting business. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. And if that's what it is, I need to be, acting pretty gingerly around it. Okay. A head-on collision isn't going to be what's going to ultimately result into the right outcome, right? Then you have people that genuinely believe that they've selected the right vendors, the right technology partners in our case, right? And are pursuing a strategy that's not aligned with our own, right? Mm-hmm. In that case, in my mind, you need to acknowledge that unless your strategies converge at some point, you will have opportunistic elements of collaboration, but not a broad platform of collaboration going forward. So you have to be practical, figure out what are the spots that you can pick, and be at the table as their strategy evolves, right? Because there are pivot points in the future that might give you an opportunity to influence in a manner that better aligns your strategies. But Varsha, what happens in 90% of the cases is people have simply not seen you deliver great value and are anxious to have you succeed. Their success is largely a function of your own. And so it's just about finding a way to be very discerning about where we can show our better selves. What I always tell my clients is that it's my job, since IBM does so many things in technology, right? It's my job to segment our competencies into 3 distinct circles. There's stuff we do because we do so many things in technology, things we do well, which are fewer, right? And things where we are best in class at, okay? And it's very important that if I'm going to represent my company and the most senior person that the client talks to representing IBM, that I be explicit about where each of the competencies that they are asking me about falls within that 3-tier segmentation, right? And so, and so that I can then more explicitly tell them about how we're porting one competence from one rung to a different rung, what investments will underpin the transition, what is the timeline, right? And figure out an intersect. They are just business people trying to solve the same problems we're looking to solve, right? Yeah. So being candid about it usually ends up in establishment of I'm not going to call it trust-based, but at least the beginning of a trust-based relationship, right? Which then usually is the one that delivers the greatest value.
I think you mentioned this a couple of times, which is very important, is the trust, right? Once you have built that trust, then you can have that conversation very candidly and openly. And I also loved your comment about the middle bucket, I think you talked about, where even if they don't see it exactly the way you see it, but you stay engaged and stay at the table as the strategy is evolving, because you never know when you can find the plug and they will start seeing your way. Absolutely great. By the way, this was the best part of this podcast so far for me. Thank you for sharing that. I'm sure that there's probably more coming, but here we go. So Riccardo, let's have some more fun. Your infectious energy and your smile and your perspective on different topics we discussed were awesome. It's time to do some rapid fire. Are you ready for that?
Absolutely.
All right, so here you go. One thing that you changed in yourself after you joined the executive suite?
Brevity. It really had me focus on brevity, on saying as few words as I could, make sure that every word cut like a knife, and really speak for impact.
Very cool. Gut versus data.
I think gut is overrated. I think we oftentimes use gut to short circuit doing the work. And I think if data is tantamount to work, I just have to make sure that I have the work done and then use gut to check my work rather than the other way around.
Spoken like a true technologist. I was going to say next time we meet for dinner or drinks, we got to debate this one out.
All right. Look forward to that.
Next one, command and control versus trust and inspire. I have a feeling I know the answer.
I think they both excellent management styles that are called upon by different circumstances. I think each one of us has a bias. My bias is probably versus to trust and inspire, but I need to acknowledge that at times the other style is called upon just as well.
Fair enough. The career you will never want to have.
I will never want to be a commodities trader. I need to do something. I need to do something that's not just financially. And do something that connects me to other people, and something where there is a level of social impact to whatever I do.
I thought you were going to say, I never want to be a chef. Okay, the next one. One thing you always do when managing business crises.
Well, I try not to waste it. I try not to waste the crisis. I think crises are a great accelerator for change. It was probably a long time coming.
Complete the sentence for me, Riccardo. I'm not afraid to fail because
I know I'm going to learn from it.
The best leader is also the best what?
The best at extracting the best out of your teams. That's the responsibility you have as a leader. You're not put on a throne. You're actually being asked to extract the best out of your team.
Well, congratulations. You did really well on the rapid fire, Riccardo.
Thanks for passing grade. And you're going to have to explain yourself at some point about the chef piece, because I'm actually a proud chef. I enjoy cooking, and one day I hope to be cooking for you.
See, look at that. I somehow had that intuition. All right. So I think we're wrapping up. Riccardo, you mentioned that you always look for intellectually stimulating jobs. Coming out of MIT Sloan, you declined so many different offers and you joined instead IBM. Lucky for them. I'm sure they're very happy that you selected them. What is the next big thing for Riccardo, which is intellectually stimulating?
Look, Varsha, I get so much out of the early discussions that I've had with you and Wings for Growth that I'm really hoping that this will be an element of my professional, but also social growth, right? So I think what you're doing is formidable. I think it can have a very broad impact. And if I can play a very small role in your big pursuits, I'll be honored to do that.
So I changed my view. You remember I was saying that was my best part of this interview. This is the best part of the interview. Selfishly speaking, thank you for saying all the wonderful things, Riccardo. I know that it's time. You have business to deliver. We use technology, but we actually live technology. And I know that Word wants IBM to function and keep functioning. So I'm going to return you to your Word so you can take care of the rest of us in the Word. Thank you for making the time. It was so much fun, as I always knew. I appreciate it.
Varsha, you're the best. Thank you so much for being patient, for rescheduling this thing from December. Look forward to continue to work together with you. This is the fun part of my day. Now I get to do the boring stuff. Now this was the fun part.
It was fun for me as well. Thank you for listening. They say actions are stronger than words. We need your support to grow many more leaders around the world and leave a legacy for the next generation that we can be proud of. Please do something amazing today and sign up.